The pregnancy itself was absolutely marvelous, absolutely fantastic. I had absolutely nothing, no diarrheas, no throwing up, nothing, no mood swings, no headaches, no cramps, nothing at all. The only thing I had is a little bit of heartburn. And for heartburn, I use these funky candies that always help me. I'm gonna try to find them. I think they're called Prego Pops or something like that. They're so good. I used them throughout all my 4 pregnancies and they were really good. So I suggest if you have heartburn, I didn't use no Tums, no nothing. I just used those Prego Pumps, they're called, or Prego Pops, something like that. I'm gonna try to find a link and link it below. I really hope to find them because they were just marvelous. I bought them in Canada at like Babies R Us or something like that, and it was really good. But anyway, so the only thing I had is heartburn, and I went overboard with her in a sense that I was on my my due date was November 7, I think. Yes, my due date was November 7. This was 2010. And I went a week over, and so they said they have to induce me to get the baby out so that she comes out. And so it was really easy in the sense that they scheduled the induction. I remember it was on a Sunday, I think. It was on a weekend. And I was so happy because I packed my bags. Everything was so on schedule. It's actually funny because I love to be on schedule. Like you know me by now. I'm a planner girl. I love everything planned. So for me, this was like heaven on earth to have to schedule my pregnancy, to come forward, to be prepared. Everything was just so flawless. I can't even tell you. So it was great. And so when I came, no, actually, I was supposed to go the next day. And I believe it was a Saturday or a Friday. I know it was on the weekend that I was scheduled in. And they called me a day before. I remember me and Max were eating breakfast at this lovely Eden's Cafe by the lakeshore, and they called me and they said, listen, we have an opening. Do you want to come in now? And I was like, yeah, I want to come in. I'm ready. Day doesn't make any difference. So we ran home. I took a shower, and that's it. And we went to the hospital. And all my relatives, all of them, I think there were like 20 people in my room. Once I got in, they punctured my my sac, and the water came out, and then they put me on oxytocin. So they put me on oxytocin because I didn't have any contractions, even when they punctured the sac where the baby was and the water came out. Normally the contractions start on their own, but I didn't have any, so they put me on oxytocin. My whole family came into the room where I was birthing. The men stayed outside and got a whole bunch of things to keep them busy because they knew it's going to be a long one. And my 2 moms, my husband's mom and my mom, were both in my room, and it was just so good. It was so miraculous. I remember eating ice cream and putting makeup on, and my mom was like, "What? Why are you putting your makeup on, you silly?" And I said, "I'm about to meet my daughter. I need to put my makeup on." And I have the funniest photo where I'm all like done with makeup waiting for Maya. It was hilarious, but I just felt so much joy, and it was just so good. I did the epidural because once they put the oxytocin, so guys, if you have experienced regular contractions and contractions on oxytocin, those are 2 different things. The regular contractions are not as vigorous as the ones on oxytocin. On oxytocin, it's like crazy. Like, it makes the regular contractions higher because they're fake. The oxytocin is trying to tell your body to make their own contractions, and so it's so much more painful. So in oxytocin, I think I could do like 3 or 4 centimeters dilation, and I was like, I need an epidural. I can't do this no more. It was very, very, very painful. So, and actually funny because I didn't realize back then why it was so painful. I thought for sure my pain tolerance is pretty high in general. So I was very surprised when it was very, very painful at like 3 centimeters. Sorry, it's windy. I hope you can hear me. But then a nurse told me that on oxytocin, it's just a lot higher. Your contractions are just a lot more painful. Once I got the oxytocin, I got the epidural. And once I got the epidural, then it was great. I didn't feel anything at all. I don't know. Some people say they feel anything on epidural. I don't feel anything on epidural, like at all, you guys, at all. It was great. I remember eating a bagel with cream cheese, and my doctor's like, I don't know if you should be eating at this point. You should probably just stick into ice cream. And I stuck to ice cream and just ate some ice cream. And so this continued from morning, because I got there in the morning, till about night at around 8, I want to say. And I was dilating very, 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 very slowly. So my doctor that was looking after me was David Gordon, and he's one of the most amazing doctors in Toronto. I think he's got like a top doctor award and everything. I don't think he's even a doctor now. I think he went higher up. So, but he was amazing. But he was on a conference that day, so I had to give birth with whoever was, in charge of giving birth that day. And it was a woman. I remember she came at around 8, I want to say, or 7:30, and she's like, "Oh, you look like you're gonna be dilating the whole night. You're very, very slow at dilating." So she's like, "I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go get some shower or whatever." I think she lived like across from the hospital. And she's like, "I'm gonna come back later at night to check on you." I said, "Okay." So I was there, and I remember at around like 8:40 feeling discomfort, and it was really weird because I'm like, I haven't felt anything the whole day, and all of a sudden I'm really feeling a lot of like pressure and even a little bit of pain. So I called the nurse and I said, "Listen, I'm feeling a little bit of pain, a little bit of discomfort. Maybe it's the dose, because I know that they can up your dose off epidural." But she's like, "No, you're in maximum dose." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't know." I'm like, "I am feeling something weird." And she's like, "Let me check you." And so when she checks me, it's one of those stories like in a movie. She's panicking, and I see her panicking, and she started yelling like code something, and it was like in a movie when all of a sudden something went wrong. So it was very, 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 very scary, that moment. And she started saying, "How long have you felt this pressure?" and blah blah. And I'm like, "I don't know. I haven't really concentrated on that because I don't feel anything." So I'm like, I felt something, more or less the last half an hour, because I felt weird that I'm starting to feel this pressure and like this little bit of pain. So she started yelling, "Call the doctor," blah blah. And so what had happened is I had full dilation at 10 centimeters, and nobody knew about it, because all of a sudden from like 5 I went to 10 in like maybe half an hour, which is very rare. So my body just did something that they didn't expect, because the doctor left. She was going to come back later at night. And so they called her. I remember they started prepping me up really fast, opening everything. My moms were just like, "What's going on?" It was very, very scary. My husband was super scared. She started saying that we don't know how long the baby was out, because the head was out for a while. And thank God I started feeling something. So then the doctor flies in about 10 minutes. She literally flies in. The other doctor is holding her her rope, the one that she needs to get into, like one of those, hospital, disinfection ropes that they get into. And so she's holding it. This doctor's flying into that rope, putting it on, and just screams at me, "Push." And I just started pushing, and I was so scared. I had tears in my eyes because I didn't know what's going on. So I started pushing really, really hard. She said, "Good, good, good." I think I pushed for maybe 5 minutes, and that's it. Maya came out. She started screaming. So I was so relieved when I heard her scream, but I was also very scared because the doctor took Maya away, and they started checking everything, and I just felt like something was wrong. So I was very scared. And for first time mom, this is very scary when they say it like that, like, when they talk in front of you and you understand that something didn't go as planned. So that was very scary. So it turns out that they were scared that something was wrong, because they don't know how long the 10 centimeter opening was there, because the doctor left, and she assumed that I will not open in the next half an hour, but I fully opened. And so 2 things happened from this wonderful mistake. One, because she screamed push as much as I could, I pushed as hard as I could, and I teared completely. I teared from, I'm sorry, where I pee to where I poop. And I'm sorry for these details, but I had a complete, I don't know how many inches tear, a complete tear. And so the good thing is Maya was fine. It was great. They got her out. She didn't have anything abnormal, so that was good. But me, on the other hand, I was a wreck. I was still on epidural, so I couldn't feel anything when she was sewing me up. I know she was sewing me up for a very long time. And although she did sew me up and she patted on me like this, saying, "You're gonna be like brand new, don't worry about it," I didn't know how painful the next 4 weeks are about to be. And for all of you that do tear during pregnancy, you know by now that that's a nightmare if you tear. I think I want to say that I had a 3rd degree tear, maybe 4th degree, I can't remember. It was bad. So away I went. I was extremely happy with Maya, and she was one of a kind. When she came out, guys, I kid you not, she had her eyes like this. Like she was looking at the world, at all the relatives. Her head was constantly going, which is really weird because most babies, when they're born, they're more quiet and sleepy and they don't really do this. Maya was the curious child of all children. And when she came out, it was so funny because even the doctor said, when the nurses were there, she's like, wow, what a curious child. Because her eyes were so there, as if she could see everything, as if, you know, as if she's not just came into this world. She was just everywhere, like this, looking into my eyes. Like, was such an interesting feeling. Like, she wasn't like babies where they kind of look at you but they kind of don't see you, don't know. She was looking straight into my eyes when she came out, and I remember that gave me such a big shivers. I was like, wow, she had that very strong look in my eyes, and it was just so emotional that even now when I remember it, I just get so emotional, you guys. It was just one of those moments that you can never forget. I remember me and Max looking into her eyes and just crying, both of us. It was great. My mother, my mom and my mother-in-law were so happy to be there because my mother-in-law was afraid that I wouldn't let her stay for the pregnancy, but I really don't mind. So it was just great because she really wanted to be a part of, you know, actual birth happening. So she was very happy. And so that was super emotional. Great first birth. The only thing that happened is that I teared. I mean, the next 4 weeks were painful because the part where you tear, you have to keep constantly putting the creams on. It's really uncomfortable to do anything from pooping to peeing because you're constantly scared that something is gonna go apart, or it's just really hurtful. So the next 4 weeks were kind of tiring, and I remember crying a lot because I was in so much pain. My boobs were in pain because I was trying to feed Maya. She was constantly crying. She was just one of those babies that does not sleep. For the whole first month, she was crying day and night. I didn't know what's wrong with her. Her tummy was hurting. Everything was hurting. She wasn't comfortable. A little tip for you guys. If you are about to give birth, you know, and even if this is your first child, do ask a lot of questions. I was not like that, and I regret that. I wish that I knew that I could have told the doctor at the time in Canada that I'm not feeling comfortable with her leaving me and not having a doctor on the floor. I just never thought about it. If you are in my shoes and the doctor comes to you when you are already in the process of dilating, tell her that you're not comfortable for her to leave. You know, you want a doctor to be there all the time, and this is apparently normal. I had no idea that you could do that. I had no idea that apparently she wasn't supposed to leave. She just did that thinking that I won't dilate to whatever, sleep a few hours, I don't know, take a bath, shower, whatever it is that she was gonna do this. And that's partially why she got so scared, because if something would have went wrong that day, it would have been on her because she's the one that left me. So that's why she screamed push. And I could have probably wrote something to the director of the hospital, but I didn't bother. But if you are a new mom, do know that you have rights, and you can tell your doctor that you don't want your doctor to leave in case they come and say, oh, it's going to take you time, I'm just going to go, I'll come back in an hour. No, unless there's another doctor to cover for her. At this point, this was the weekend, there was no other doctor in the hospital other than her in the birthing unit. She was the only birthing doctor, and she left. Otherwise, they would have just called whoever is, on staff. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, for all of you that are getting tears after pregnancy, get your laxatives with you. You'll need them from probably day 1. I remember taking prune juice. Prune juice is a great natural laxative. It doesn't work on everyone, but it works on me like magic. So if you don't want to start on pills, laxative pills are like, there's a Sana tea, which is a laxative tea, and it's some kind of Sana herbal thing that makes you poop. Get that because you'll need it, because you'll be too scared to go to the restroom on your own. You will need a laxative to help you go through that process, at least for the first 4 weeks. You'll have no choice, because otherwise it's going to be too painful. Just take my word for it. So make sure you have some laxative packed in your bag for if you need them. Another thing I want to say, for all of you that want to know what I took to the hospital and what my hospital bag looked like and what I recommend taking to the hospital bag, I will be talking about it at the end of the video. So stay tuned for that. All of you moms to be, you'll want to know what helped me the most in my pregnancy bag throughout my 5 pregnancies and what was totally useless. I'm going to do another video on what helped me with colicky babies, what I recommend for small tiny babies when they're born, what helped me with when they have a tummy ache, what helped with so many other things. But in this video I just want to cover the pregnancies as per the title. So let's go to pregnancy number 2, because I think the pregnancy number 1 we pretty much covered. Pregnancy number 2. We always wanted lots of kids, so that's no surprise. We never really used any contraceptives at all. So, funny enough, when I got pregnant with Martin, which was kind of a, I don't want to say a surprise since we didn't use the contraceptives. Unlike with the first pregnancy, with my second pregnancy with Martin, I felt hungry all the time, which was very shocking to me, because with Maya, I was okay. I didn't have any obvious, foods that I wanted. I wasn't even hungry. So with second pregnancy, that really put me in a situation where I was very surprised. Okay guys, and since this is a very honest pregnancy video, you'll be shocked to find out what it is that I wanted with my second child. First of all, I wanted meat, steaks, and I'm not a big meat eater. As most of you know it, I've been raw foodie, vegan, vegetarian. I do eat meat now, but not as much, and maybe once a week. So for me to find out that I wanted to eat meat every day was quite shocking. I'll be honest with you. I was like, what? I want meat? I wanted it like crazy, like when kids want candy type of thing. I just wanted meat all the time. And I remember Max making these huge steaks for me. I remember he made a really huge one for him, like 16 ounces, and he made one for me, and I'm like, I can't finish that. I barely finished a 6 ounce steak. Like, are you kidding me? He's like, I don't know, lately you've been eating a lot of meat. And I remember finishing that whole 16-ounce steak, and I was like, oh my God. And I just wanted meat. I didn't want salad. I didn't want anything else. I did put some veggies into myself because I felt guilty for just eating meat, but that's crazy. And what's more shocking is that I wanted beer. Guys, I don't drink beer. I don't like beer. I probably drink beer once in a half a year on a weird occasion when we're like, somewhere at the beach, or like Max has some beer he wants me to try, but I'm not a beer drinker. I don't like beer. I don't drink it. I'm just not my thing. All of a sudden, I remember Max opening a beer with the steak, and I was like, that smells amazing. He's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, but you could definitely tell I'm having a boy, because I don't think in my life I've ever wanted so much meat and beer. It was just crazy. Okay, let's not get ideas now. I obviously didn't drink beer. I did have like a sip or two from Max drinking beer. Not a big deal. I'm not fanatic in that sense, but I was just very surprised that it tasted so good to me, and I really wanted it. Like, it was just weird because I never wanted. But I guess hormones are weird in that way, and I had a boy, so you could tell that I had a boy. And so I was humongous, you guys. I was humongous. I'm gonna put a photo here so you could see how big I was with Martin. I mean, it was crazy. Kept eating throughout the whole pregnancy. I did keep moving. I always did, but I just ate way over what I should have ate, and it was a lot of meat, and I couldn't help it. I was just craving it all of my pregnancy. So he was a big boy. He was a very big boy. He was a 10-pound baby. And so, funny enough though, you know, if you want to know, I have some tears. I have some tears on my tummy, but from Maya, not from him. I think because I was so tiny when I was pregnant with Maya, that with the first pregnancy you always get some tears, and even though I was using those creams and everything, it didn't really help me. With the second baby, it didn't really help that he was 10 pounds. I think I got even more tears on my tummy, and they were kind of red, and I knew this will be visually not so great, but doesn't matter. So I am pregnant with him. Everything is going fine. Same thing is happening. I have a due date. And actually, I should have mentioned that Maya was born November 14, 2010. Ended up being born November 14 from the November 7 due date that they gave me. So with Martin, same thing happened. They scheduled me for induction because he just didn't want to leave my mommy's tummy. He really enjoyed it being there. Great pregnancy, nothing to add, other than the fact that I was really big and floppy, and it was really hard for me to walk at the end. Had minor heartburn. I used the same Prego Pops. Nothing else. Oh, what I want to add is that being pregnant with a boy, you guys, I looked fantastic. I was so beautiful. Something happened to me. My hair was growing at a speed you won't know. My skin was so gorgeous, glowy. I needed no makeup at all. It was just so amazing. I remember everybody telling me, oh my God, you look so beautiful. I was just, I can't tell you. I don't even know if the photos tell it, but I was just stunning, and there's no other word to put it. With Maya, I had some pimples here and there. I had some weird thin hair and all that stuff. With Martin, complete opposite. He gave me all of that, and it was amazing. Believe it or not. So with Martin, I was scheduled in, and I remember it was on like again on a Sunday or on a Monday, something like that. And all of a sudden, I remember waking up either on Saturday or Sunday. I have to ask Max because I never remember the days. He does. I remember waking up and I'm like, Max, I feel like I'm having some cramps. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah. And so we went to the hospital. I understood that I have contractions. They were about 5 minutes apart. So we started getting the bag ready. By the time we got to the hospital, they were 3 minutes apart. I remember getting in and they're like, okay, let's start this. You are dilated. Oh, and at the time I was dilated like 3 centimeters, which is at the point where I asked for epidural with Maya. But in this pregnancy, because it was natural, it was totally fine. I could totally tolerate that. So I could compare the fact that on the oxytocin, the contractions are a lot more vigorous than if they're natural. So we went in, everything happened very naturally. The water came out on its own at around 3 centimeters. I did ask for a epidural because I just liked it so much, in a way that I felt so happy with Maya, in a way that I was so aware and so there. And so I was too scared to go through the whole 10 centimeters, and I said epidural. My doctor said no problem. We did the epidural. With Maya, the epidural hurt a little bit. I want to say like a pinch. With Martin, I felt nothing. Like when the guy said I'm done, I was like, what? I have the epidural, you're done? It's just marvelous. The guy that did it was amazing. Just such a professional gentleman. So the epidural was done. I was happy. I remember doing the same thing, putting on makeup, getting ready to meet my son. I was so excited. It was just so good. With Martin, I got to give birth with Dr. White, Dr. Gordon White. He was just amazing. I've always wanted to give birth with him because he was the top doctor in Toronto, in all of Toronto. He was the best doctor out there, and to get to him was very hard. It's just that my physician doctor knew him personally, so I was able to get in and give birth with him, and he was in town that day, so I was super excited because he was going to be my doctor. And I was also excited and scared for the fact that I had that previous tear. And so when I was giving birth to Martin, Maya was 2 years old. And believe it or not, when I tell you, the tear, even though it was obviously not there anymore, the skin where it was still thin. And I was scared that it will tear apart again. But I knew I'm with like top doctors, so I was hoping that's not gonna happen. And so when I started giving birth, my mothers were there, my aunt was there, which was super exciting because she just came and she was with us. She came from Russia to live in Canada. So it was super exciting. She was there too. It was the three of them and me, and all the boys were outside. I remember them buying a tub of Play-Doh to keep Maya busy because Maya was there too. I don't know if she was there all the time, or no, actually maybe she was at home, or maybe they took her home after. I don't remember the exact scenario, but I remember they had a tub of Play-Doh to keep them busy. They were doing different shapes and showing me while I was dilating. So it was just such a gorgeous time with family. And I think I have my birthing video somewhere in like a really bad format. If I ever get to it, I will post it, but I'd have to see it. So with Martin, everything went very smooth. I remember when I was 10 centimeters, Dr. White is like, okay, let's do this. And I remember Max just sitting down on a chair, and he's like, why are you sitting down on a chair? And I'm gonna make you work. This is your baby coming out of her too, so I'm gonna make you work. And it was hilarious. He made him work. He made him hold my legs and just support me when I needed it, instead of just sitting there, which was kind of nice. I like the fact that he was very like present in there. With Maya, he got to chop the cord. And with Martin was the same thing. Max always wanted to, cut the cord with all the kids. So I remember telling Dr. White when I was already 10 centimeters that, he's such a big baby. He's 10 pounds. I'm probably going to tear again. And he's like, you in my hands now. Don't worry about it. That's what he told me. I remember him telling me that. And that was kind of very calming for me. So I gave birth at exactly the same time as I gave birth with Maya. I gave birth at 9:13, you guys, in exactly the same room 2 years later. It was crazy. 2 years later, in the same room as Maya, at the same time as Maya was born, at 9:13 p.m. And on top of that, it was February 2nd, 2013. So just a lot of 13s. Maybe that's his lucky number going forward. But I had not a single tear with a 10-pound baby. Guys, not a single tear with a 10-pound baby. That's just telling you that most of the tears that come like that are probably on a doctor, from my experience. He was so good with handling me. When the contraction came, he was like a military guy. Like, he was not, how would I say this? He was not one of those doctors like, oh, sweetie, let's do this. He was like, let's do this. concentrate and listen to me only. Whatever instructions I tell you, you do. So when the contraction was coming, I remember he was like, push. As soon as it was done, he was like, calm, stop, don't move, nothing. And that's how he kept me, and it was just so good. And I remember giving birth like a breathe. I think it took me 13 minutes to give birth. It was smooth. I had no tears. He was a big baby. He came out and he was huge, you guys. He was huge. He was white. He was chubby. He was so beautiful. It's just that manly face. And on top of that, oh, I remember now, my dad was not there because my dad took Maya home and they were with Maya at home. My dad was with Maya at home. And when the baby came out, I remember my mom crying and my aunt crying. My aunt is the sister of my dad, and she was saying, he looks like your dad, like one face. I remember when they gave him to me, I'm like, I had that expression on my face, like, Dad, what are you doing here? Literally, guys, he looked 100% like my dad, and it was just crazy. I mean, I look like my dad, and so my baby boy looked like my dad, and he ended up looking like me now, so that's probably why. But you don't understand how much he was just like my dad. That just brought so much tears to my eyes. We showed my papa the photos, and Papa was like, oh my God, my copy is born. It's just so hilarious. And even till this day, he has so many traits from my dad. He's very smart. He likes to read, just has a lot of traits that my dad does. So I guess things just go like that from grandparents to kids. So the birthing was great. He was the sweetest baby. He was the calmest baby of all of them. I remember me and Max with the second baby, we were like, whew, okay, we need to breathe it out and live through this first month, because the first month is always the hardest. And I remember going to sleep when we came from the hospital at, like, I want to say 9 o'clock. He ate, and I remember seeing sunrise the next time that I wake up, and I was like, Max, is something wrong with our baby? Is he alive? Like, no joke, that's the question I asked, because I couldn't believe he slept through from 8 o'clock in the evening till about 6:37 in the morning without waking up. He was a miracle baby in my eyes, because I was in so much pain with Maya, and it was such a hard time being a first-time mom, and just Maya was very fuzzy baby. She was always fuzzy. Even with the 2 years, she was fuzzy, just a fuzzy baby. And to have to sleep through the whole night with the baby was like, what? We woke up in tears of joy because we slept through the whole night. I was completely renewed. I was running around the whole next day. It was absolutely fantastic. I felt amazing. It was just so great. And throughout the whole first months and first year, he was just a beautiful baby. He was eating and sleeping, eating and sleeping. He was a chubster. He was a chubby baby. He was a big baby. But he was such a good baby. He would eat, sleep, play, never fuzzy, never colicky. Just from all of my babies, he was the calmest. He was the sweetest. And the only thing that he had, unlike Maya, was very attached to me. So he would never wanted to leave me out of sight, always wanted to be on my hands, never wanted to be with anyone else, like just a very attached baby. But he's like that even now, you guys. He's just such a cute boy. He's always attached, always calling me, always very much missing me when he's not there. Even in school, he always tells me that he misses me every day. So he's just that kind of a person. Like, Maya was okay with my aunt, because my aunt is the one that raised all my kids. She was my second mom, my babysitter, my everything. She was staying with the kids while I had my clients, while I had my work. Me and her were doing everything together. My mom was helping too, my mother-in-law too, but my aunt was with them. My mom at the time worked with me. We had a jewelry company in Toronto, so me and my mom were taking on clients, running around with work, while my aunt was with the kiddos at home. And so Martin was the one that was always like, Mom, don't leave, or, you know, he was always like very fuzzy when I left and super happy when I came back. So just that kind of baby, and he really missed me a lot. Really wanted to spend a lot of time with me. which we did. The good thing about having your own business is that you can schedule in your own time. So I would like schedule clients for an hour, come back home, or like work until 1 or 2 and then come back home. So that was very good. And then something very weird happened after we had the second baby, and very scary. The doctor told us we can't have any more kids. We always wanted a lot of kids, so for us this was very, very shocking. And I remember me and Max crying even though we had 2 kids. We've always wanted more, so for us this was a big shock, but we decided God knows better. This is what it is. If we're meant to have 2 kids in this life, then we'll have 2 kids in this life. I developed some kind of cyst on my ovaries, something with endometrios or something. It's called endometria something. So they said that it's very hard to get pregnant with that condition. And actually, let me tell you a fun fact. I remember when I was going to my doctor before we got the miscarriage and before we even started giving a thought to children with Max, we did all the tests and blah blah, and my doctor said, if you have 1 child, you are already lucky. And I said, why? And so I didn't really realize, but throughout all my young teenager years, when I started having my period, I had the period around 4 times a year, you guys. I always had problem with thyroid and hormones, and so she says that my eggs come out 4 times a year as opposed to a woman that has 12 times a year. So she says that for me to get pregnant will be a miracle, and to give birth will be a miracle too. And we got pregnant really fast with miscarriage. We got really pregnant fast with my after. So that's very interesting. She was very shocked at how easily we were getting pregnant, even though I don't have regular periods, you guys. I have a period once in 3-4 months. Just wanted to say that as a side note. And so here, to add to what I already had with hormones and thyroid, the endometrios and the cyst on the ovarius that I developed was not helping. And they said that 99% I won't have any more kids, and that I should just be blessed that I have 2 of these. And so I was. So me and Max never used contraceptives, or I want to say we continued not to use contraceptives because there was no point, because they told me that I won't have any more kids. And so time went on, and I remember getting chubbier at that point because of my hormones, because of all the cyst or whatever. And I remember telling Max that I need to do something about it because I started kind of gaining weight, which I wasn't happy with. I remember going to the doctor and him saying you need to go on these really vigorous hormones, which are really harmful in a way, but they will help kind of stress your system and put your thyroid back in, and even help with the endometrios. So I said, okay, let's do it. He gave me the prescription for the hormones, and he said, before you do the prescription, you just have to take one of those over-the-counter pregnancy tests just to make sure you're not pregnant, because he said that if you take them and you're pregnant, you're either gonna have a baby who has Down syndrome or you're gonna have a miscarriage, because they're too vigorous and they can't be taken for a woman who is pregnant. But he obviously said you're not pregnant because we already went over that I won't have kids anymore and blah blah, but he says it's just a precaution. I said okay. I bought one of those over-the-counter pregnancy tests. I remember sitting in a restroom, just peeing on one of those, reading about my pills that I'm about to take for, I think it was a month or 3 months course that I had to take them. They were like horrible. They had like horrible side effects of like headache and maybe throwing up and diarrhea. And I was like, holy, this is really bad. It was just one of those really bad hormonal medicine. I remember being so upset about all this situation. And then do you know what happened? I couldn't believe it. I looked at my stick that I peed on, and it said pregnant. And I was like, what? What? I'm like, it's probably some kind of glitch. I went and I bought 4 different pregnancy sticks, and surely enough, all of them said pregnant. I was in tears. I didn't know if I should cry or laugh or what. I called Max and I'm like, Max, I'm pregnant again. And I remember him saying, what do you mean? You were just about to take all those hormonal pills. They told us we can't have kids anymore. I said, well, I guess God has different plans than what they told us. And I was pregnant with my third Marianna this way, which was totally unplanned and a total surprise. And you could tell because she's always full of surprises, that girl, just like the way she was born. So I remember sitting there just crying of joy and happiness from the fact that God gave us third child, from the fact that I didn't have to go on those hormonal pills, that it was just so daunting. And I was like, wow, thank you, God. I was just so blessed at heart for this gift. And so my pregnancy started and I was super happy. Again, same thing, super easy. Nothing really. I was working a lot. I was had the other two kids, so I was super busy with the third one. I was on a chubbier side because I told you I already gained weight after the second baby with the thyroid. And so I remember with Marianna, I was pretty chubby on my own, plus the pregnancy added to that. So I was like, I was kind of big. I'll show you a photo of how I looked like, but I was big. I had Dr. White again, and he was super happy for us too. But he did tell me that he will be at a conference most of the year, so most likely I won't be giving birth with him. And so that I knew at the beginning. I didn't want any particular foods with Marianna. I didn't want steaks. I didn't, there was nothing, no cravings that I had with Marianna. It's pretty much a good pregnancy. And then I remember with her, I don't remember what my due date was, but I know that I went past the due date and they were thinking of scheduling the appointment for me to come and give birth or an induction. And then all of a sudden, I remember that I started having cramps on my own. So I started the contractions on my own. And the funniest thing happened, you guys, because I had the two kids now and I was so busy. I remember it was like a family get together. I started having the contractions. And then I'm like, my brother was over, so I'm like, do you want to go to the park and chill a little bit and walk around? He's like, are you sure you can? I'm like, yeah, I think I'm fine. We went to the park, we walked around, the contractions kept getting higher, and I remember I was like standing, and he's like, I think we need to get you home. Like, you look like you're gonna give birth soon. I'm like, okay, let's go home. I remember going home, and I had laundry that was undone, and I was like, Max, I need to finish my laundry. And he's like, are you crazy? Like, what are you doing? And I'm standing there finishing laundry and folding and standing like this. And I don't know why I took so long to go to the hospital. I felt like if I go too soon, then I'm just gonna, stick around there. I might as well be useful here. And so I just kept doing things as I would without realizing that I kept going and going, and my contractions kept going from 5 centimeters to 3 centimeters. And so I remember Max saying, stop all this nonsense and stop the laundry. You have to go to the hospital now. We drove to the hospital. I remember I could barely breathe in the car when we were driving. It was just, I was in so much pain. My contractions were probably around still 3 minutes apart. Maybe started to be 2 minutes apart. I was like, I kept doing these really weird sounds because it was hurting so much to even sit in a position in the car. And Max was driving like a crazy guy. It's just like, why did you have to do laundry? Why did you have to go to the park with your brother? It's crazy. We should have went to the hospital. He was so nervous. So I remember us getting there and the lady's like, okay, you guys need to get checked in, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, okay, let me just check you. I remember her checking me and she's like, oh my God, you need to move. You're like 6 or 7 centimeters. You need to move. And I'm like, I'm what? I was so surprised, you guys, because it felt a lot less vigorous than I had like 3 or 4 centimeters in oxytocin the first pregnancy. But you guys, I hardly remember the next couple of hours because it was just, I was in so much pain. It was terrible. I remembered how much pain I was and I was just like, my eyes would black out. Like, I remember parts of things that happened, but not the whole scenario because I was just out of it. I remember getting into the room and the doctor's like, you can do it. We're going to start pushing soon. And I'm like, no, I need the epidural. I need the epidural. And he's like, you don't need the epidural. I'm like, I need the epidural. I remember I said it like that to him. Like, I need it right now. And he's like, okay, I'm going to do as you wish. I'm going to get you the epidural. But he's like, You don't need it. I'm like, you just get me the epidural. So he gets the guy does the epidural for me really quickly, and it was good. As soon as he leaves and he's done epidural, mind you, the epidural didn't kick in yet because just didn't have time. As soon as he leaves, the doctor's like, push now. I'm like, but I feel everything. I'm like, I can't push. It hurts too much. Why isn't the epidural working? He's like, the epidural needs time to kick in, but the head is there. And I just pushed through, and it was a nightmare, and I was blanked out, and it was a pain on a whole new level of pains. But at the same time, I want to tell you something to calm you down. At some point when it's really, really painful, your brain shuts off that pain. You're just not there. Like, you hear everything, you do what the doctors say, but mentally you're not there. The pain is too strong, and I guess when that happens, your brain does something to you. I don't remember parts of it. I remember being blacked out. I remember being like, I'm there, but I'm not there at the same time. It's a very weird feeling. And so all I remember after is all this huge pain, being blanked out, screaming, this hurts so much, crying. I remember crying throughout this pain. My mom saying, sweetie, a little bit more, blah, blah. I remember her voice. I remember just crying and saying, Mom, but this hurts so much, like so much. I remember those exact words because that pain was like nothing I've experienced before. It was just so hurtful. I remember my mom somehow being on my side, and I remember her crying, seeing me, because all the women that went through it, they know what it feels like, and so they sympathize. So I remember that. And then I remember Marianna on my hands, and it was just so funny because I was in so much pain. I don't even remember that first look that she gave me. I remember her face overall, and she looked so cute. She looked so funny. She had such a funny face. Even today, I think her face is so different. Like, Maya is all classy. Like, her face is so classy and beautiful. Martin is just such a gentleman, but he was such a chubster. He was just so cute. And Marianna just had the most exotic face when she was born. Like, first she was a little bit of an olive skin, and I was like, wow, you're dark. It's like, that's so interesting that her skin, even today, her and Martin have the darkest skin. Like, when we go for tanning, they originally have this tanned color. Mine is super white, I'm super white, but they have this olive skin, which was so, I remember seeing her and I was like, why does she have such a dark skin? That's weird. But at the same time, her face was just so exotic. Like, she looked to me just such a beautiful, exotic face. I don't know how else to put it. She just looked so pretty, and I was like, you're such a beautiful young lady. I was just so happy that this is over. And the fact that I got epidural, I was actually not sorry, even though it didn't help me giving birth. It did help me when he was suing me because I teared again. I probably didn't listen to the commands when I was supposed to stop and not stop because I don't remember most of it, and so I teared again in the same place, and he had to sew me up again. And so that's my baby number 3. The only thing I want to say that's interesting is that the doctor that I was giving birth with, I can't remember what his name was, but he was just such a marvelous doctor. Complete opposite of Dr. White. Like, Dr. White, I told you, he was like military, like, let's get working. This doctor was so sweet. He was like, sweetie, I know what you're going through. And I remember him saying that. And he was like, don't worry, this is almost over. You can do this. He was just so gentle and so beautiful. And that was very different. I wasn't used to that after Dr. White. So he was great. Really liked him. After that, I think we went from the hospital in about a day. And what shocked me the most is that even though I got this epidural, the fact that I gave birth on my own somehow made a big difference, in a sense that normally you get blood for quite some time, for like a week and a half. With giving the birth naturally, I had blood for like 3-4 days. And then I was clean. And I was so surprised that the period of getting better after having a baby was so much easier this time with giving birth on your own. And obviously, once I gave birth, they took the epidural away. So the epidural only lasted like maybe 5 to 7 minutes. So it was really not worth doing the epidural, but I really didn't know any other way. And I was too scared. But God has had its own plans, and I did give birth to Marianna on my own, and that was very painful, unlike all the other births that I went through. Other than that, she was born, I can't remember, she was born in the evening time as well. I want to say 9:12 or 9:13 as well. They seem to be being born all at around evening time for me. Yeah, it was great. My third birth was great, but they're very painful. Let's go to birth number 4 and how I got there. So obviously with baby number 4, it was amazing because we didn't expect it at all. It just came out of, just as a surprise to us, really. Didn't really plan on it. Just like we never really planned for any of our kids. And then I remember feeling nauseous. I always feel nauseous about the first 2-3 weeks. Not throwing up, just a little bit nauseous all the time. And very, very sleepy. I remember feeling that when I had the 3 kids, and I was like, wow, wait, this is really weird. This reminds me of something. I was like, let me take a test just in case. Sure enough, I did. And sure enough, I was pregnant with the 4th baby. I remember announcing this when we had the cottage in Canada and saying to everyone that we're pregnant with our 4th baby. And everyone was like, again? It's like, yeah, again. So it was kind of fun. But yeah, the 4th pregnancy was by far the hardest, and the birth too. That pregnancy is unlike any other. Stay tuned. So, with pregnancy number 4, I am an eczema prone person. I had eczema when I was a child. I had eczema throughout my teenage years, but it stopped when I had my first daughter. And so it was completely gone. So I didn't know what eczema is, although I went through harsh times where everything was covered in eczema and itching and flaky skin. All the people that have eczema, you know what I mean. With the 4th baby, all of a sudden, as soon as I got pregnant with her, you guys, it came back with vengeance. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it, it was bad. I was pregnant, covered red from head to toe with eczema that was itching. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything. This was in Canada, so the air is dry and cold, and it was just really, really hard for me. I remember Max saying, let's go somewhere where you can get some salt water. So we went to Cuba when I was maybe 3 months pregnant. Spent a couple of days there just to see if it'll help me make things even worse. If the itch was worse, I remember coming back. Oh, and I got burned there, and I came back with a 3rd-degree burn to the hospital, and I said, is there anything I can take for this eczema? And they said no. In Canada, they're very much into being natural. They won't give you anything that could potentially harm a baby. So they're like, all you have is natural remedies. And I spent most of my pregnancy in a bathtub. No joke, guys, in a bathtub, because I would fill it up with sea salt. I would fill it up with oatmeal bath. I did chlorine bath. I did a whole bunch of things that I could just to stay sane. It was that bad. So 4th pregnancy was no joke. I got really skinny. Like, I'll show you a photo right now. You'll see I'm super skinny with a huge belly out because I was just, I lost a lot of weight because I couldn't eat much. I ate most of the things that were super easy to digest, like boiled potatoes and some nuts and fruits and veggies, but everything's so simple and unprocessed. I didn't eat any processed foods. So fourth pregnancy was going really, really harsh for me. And then I started having about a week early. So with all my other 3 pregnancies, I was always going a week after. So I was going past due date. With this one, a week before the due date, I started having cramps and feelings down there. I went to the hospital, they admitted me, and then they said, listen, you're dilated like 2 centimeters. Nothing's happening in your body. This could take a few days. So like go home, start walking a lot and blah, blah. So I've been in the hospital for like a good portion of maybe 5 or 6 hours. And I was walking all over the hospital trying to get this whole thing started. Nothing been started. All my relatives were there in the hospital with me for 5 hours. My brother, my sister-in-law, everyone was supporting me. And then we had to go home because nothing was happening. Like I was dilated like 2 centimeters, but they wouldn't let me be in there unless my contractions started, which they didn't. And I was not due yet because based on their laws in Canada, they can only schedule induction when you are already past your due date, which I was not. So I had to go home. I went home, you guys, and that night I remember going to sleep at around 9, waking up at 2 with crazy contractions, like crazy. And I was like, Max, we gotta drive now. I remember we drove to the hospital as soon as we could. Remember, I was so painful at 6 centimeters because when I got in there, they're like, you are 6 centimeters dilated. Congratulations. I'm like, just get me an epidural. I don't want to go through what I did with like Marianna. So they got me in. They did my favorite epidural. So that was good. But same thing happened where they did it too late. So I could still feel some of the pain. So I think some of y'all that are saying that you could feel the pain with epidural, you probably got it too late because all the other times, the 2 times that I did it early, I couldn't feel anything. Maybe because it needs time to kick in. But this time, because I did it late, I could feel some of the pain. But it wasn't as bad, so it was okay. I gave birth to Milana, the same doctor as gave birth to Marianna. He was just so gentle and loving, and I really liked him. I can't remember his name, but it was so good, so good. So Milana was born really good. I think she was born in the morning, 5 something or 6 a.m., something like that. So she wasn't born in the evening like the rest of the 3. She was such a tiny little baby. She was the smallest out of all of them. Well, no wonder, I barely ate. She was like just so tiny, like a little kitten. It was so cute. And so she came into this world. I was so happy. I remember crying because this whole pregnancy and birth was super hard for me. And I remember just crying my lungs out when she came out just because it was just such a hard pregnancy for me. It was really, really, really harsh. But I think she's the only one that I mostly concentrated on in a sense that with all the other pregnancies, I was always busy and working and kids. And with her, I really had to take time to myself. I read a lot of Bible. I read a lot of calming books and self-love and all that kind of stuff because of the way the pregnancy was. And so I feel like with her, I talked the most when she was in the belly. We listened to a lot of music together. I spent it the most with her when she was in my tummy, if that makes sense, because I've had such a harsh pregnancy. But she was born and she was a good baby. She wasn't fuzzy. She was kind of in the middle. Like she wasn't too fuzzy. She wasn't too crying. She was good. She slept through. She let me sleep. She ate good. And the one thing I wanted to mention, guys, I breastfed Maya for about 2.5 months. I breastfed Martin for about 2 weeks. I breastfed Marianna for about 1.5 weeks, and I did not breastfeed Milana. Right away, I took a bottle to the hospital, and I bottle fed her throughout all her. She doesn't know what a boob is. The story behind me not breastfeeding them, at first with Maya, I tried everything. We went to every single clinic available. All the doctors tried for me to breastfeed, and they pushed so hard for me to breastfeed that they damaged one of my breasts with the way they were pushing down. They damaged some of the layers of the breast, and it took me a really long time to rehabilitate after that, because they were trying for me to breastfeed so much. For all you that don't know, Canada is very keen on like natural birth and like natural, giving breast to the baby. Like they will push you to your limits unless you either tell them no or you just can't. And in my scenario, I couldn't. So what happened to me at the end is that one of my breasts only has 2 small tiny holes as opposed to 3 or 4 like it is on my other breast. And so they tried to hook me up on all different kind of suction and whatnot, and it didn't work. And at the end, my doctor said that this is not going to work, because the reason Maya was so fuzzy as a baby the first months is because she really wanted food, and she was hungry, and she couldn't suck from my breast because there was nothing coming out. And so it was going in a loop. I was going frustrated. The baby was frustrated. She needed food. The doctor said to start giving her food via bottle, but he told me I can't give her to her as a bottle, because if I do, she'll take the bottle as opposed to my breast. So he told me to put this thing, which was basically a little, tube that goes on your breast. And so when the baby sucks on the breast, the tube is the one that comes out with the milk. That's artificial. The tube goes into here. It's really weird. And so the baby thinks they're sucking on your breast and the milk is coming out. The milk is actually artificial and it comes out from the bottle, but the bottle is kind of set in here with the tube. So it's kind of weird. But I've done that, and she was still crying because the whole process was just so hard. You had to hold that tube, hold the baby. So it's just such a mess that at the end, when I gave her a bottle, I remember that feeling. We were like 3 or 4 weeks into this whole nightmare without me sleeping, with me crying and everything. And I remember my mom saying, listen, I bottle fed you and you're fine. Just give her the bottle, for crying out loud. Because she was just so fed up with me crying and going to these doctors and them damaging my breast. And it was just such a daunting experience. So I gave her a bottle, and I remember giving her a bottle, and she slept through for like 6 or 7 hours. And I was like, what? All this months I could have slept and I could have been a better mom? And I said, forget it. Just forget it. Started giving her a bottle. Both of us started actually enjoying our relationship. She started eating. She was doing well. She was gaining weight. It was so good. And I said, forget it. This is not meant to be. So after that, with Martin, same story. I tried. I had a lot of milk, and it was too much. So I pretty much tried a little bit with each one of them except for Milana, and then just went to bottle feeding. And then at the end, because I was not always there, and because we had the company, so I had to see clients even when I gave birth to all my kids, it was a lot easier with the bottles anyways, because I could leave it with my aunt, I could leave the baby with my mom, so it gave me a lot more freedom that way. So that's the story there. With Milana, she was totally great. She was just so beautiful. She was such a small little kitten when she was born. I remember saying she's the gentlest kid because her face was like a little angel. She was just perfect. Like, you know how I felt with Maya, she was just so curious. With Marianna, she was just so exotic. Her face, facial expression, everything. With Milana, it was like she was just a baby on like magazine that you see. Like the most perfect facial expressions. So elegant. She was a little tiny baby, so she just looked so beautiful and so elegant, and I just kept kissing her all the time, and all my babies. I remember kissing them all the time. And Mom was like, why are you kissing them all the time? And I'm like, I just can't stop. I love them so much. So that was interesting. But stay tuned what I took to the hospital and what I recommend taking to all the young moms. So let's talk about what essentials you need in your pregnancy bag, because half of the things that are on internet I didn't find useful, so I wanted you to see what my list looked like. And it's very minimal. I'm about minimal living, really enjoy minimalism, and so my list is going to be short and sweet. Let's dive into it. For a mom, let's go one by one. Lip balm, self-explanatory, needed. You talk a lot, you make a lot of movements with your mouth. So even when I was in the state where my contractions were, my lips were constantly dry. So lip balm. Nipple cream, if you're planning to, nurse, you really need a good nipple cream. There's several ones. Honestly, they're all the same. So as long as they have vitamin E, you're good to go. Brush, makeup, self-explanatory. You'll need that for during or after. So you need to get that. Whatever else skincare stuff that you take. Soap and shampoo, I wouldn't take it unless you're using something very specific, because the hospital does provide the soap and shampoos. So I never took one, but if you do use something of a specific, brand or something you're used to, just take that with you, because almost all the birthing rooms have a shower. One of the most important things that I found useful was the birthing gown, and I had a couple of things that I took with me. It was baggy pants and baggy shirts and things that I would walk around in the hospital, things that I will walk around with the baby, and all of them really need to be loose. So when you're packing stuff to wear to the hospital, make sure it's super loose. Pants, maybe a robe, maybe some loose shirts, but don't go thinking you're gonna be Gucci walking around the hospital. You need that clothes that's just loose and comfortable, because you ain't gonna feel like partying, let me tell you that. So the most important things that I found for women to be the most important thing in your bag. Are you ready? It is the underwear. And no, not just regular underwear. It's the underwear. They are one-time use underwear with pads. If you go to any Walgreens, CVS, if you live in Canada, Shoppers Drug Mart has them. They are regular underwear you can buy from small, medium, and large, and they come with embedded pad already. I don't know if they're meant for pregnancy, and I don't know if they're meant for older people. Not sure, but they're called just that, one-time use underwear. They come with a pad. Honestly, guys, you will thank me. Get those, because it's a nightmare. I remember with Maya, I took regular underwear, and those are super uncomfortable because everything is kind of inflamed. So even my baggiest underwear were not comfortable for me because they were tight, and I had to put those huge pads, those like 1-inch thick pads, because the blood is constantly coming out of you. So the only thing that really helped me with my second baby, Martin, was these birthing underwear or maternity underwear, or they're just called underwear with pads. You can find them anywhere, but they're just lifesaver. I remember with Martin, I was like, this is amazing, and it was really good. So get those, because those are super important. Not a lot of people talk about them. When I searched through lists of things, I couldn't find anywhere that people specify that, so that's very important. If you can't find them in the store, look online. Maternity underwear, one-time use underwear with pads, menstrual underwear. I guess a lot of people maybe use them when they have period. I'm not sure what the use is. I don't think it's only for birthing. I think there should be other uses. But those are very important. Guys, slippers or flip-flops, whatever you're comfortable with. Socks. I was very cold in the hospital, so I used a lot of socks. I got a blanket for myself, a blanket for husband, because he was staying over. This was pre-COVID times, so you were allowed a husband in your room. I don't think they are now, but that's hopefully not prolonged. But I took a blanket because the hospital's blanket was so thin, I was still cold. And the conditioners at the hospital, which is crazy, the AC was so cold. So I did really find it useful to have a blanket for myself and a blanket for husband for when he stayed at night. Okay. Nursing bra if you're gonna nurse. Going home clothes we covered, something comfortable. This is the last and very important point. If your mom is not there, let's say you really want her to be there when you're giving birth, put a photograph, maybe just a little tiny photograph that you're gonna put on your stand. Maybe that's gonna make you feel better when you need her, because there are situations when you're giving birth where you really wish like you could hug your mom. Trust me. So I was fortunate that my mom was there and I was able to like have that support. But I think that if I were to give another birth here in US and my mom is not here now and she wouldn't be able to come to the hospital, I'd probably have a photo of her. Just will keep me warm at my heart. So if you have like a good luck charm that you know you took to, I don't know, exams,
I don't know if you're in sports, something help you in sports, something that, of a good luck charm, put that. I know some people bring religious attributes like, Jesus photo, sorry, not photo, you know what I meant. Maybe your favorite pendant with Jesus or a cross pendant, whatever it is that will make you feel comfortable. I know I've had some of my friends bring stuffed toy from a childhood that they kind of carried through life, and it kind of, put their mind at a warm place. I know this sounds really weird, but when you're at a state of this like chaos and everything hurts, and you really become a child in your soul, where anything that warms up your soul is just makes it a little bit better. So just stick something in your bag, something that that if you're in really big pain, it just kind of helps it. So for the baby, let's discuss baby now. Clothes. This is important because I find that all the people that have this online, all the websites, Babylist, baby.com, and all these websites, they just put clothes for babies 0 to 3 months. But I don't find it quite that simple. When I had Maya, I took random, small, tiny newborn clothes. And they were all too big because I concentrated on taking them 0 to 3 months, and she was too tiny to fit into any of them. So she was really small as well. We ended up buying premature clothes that fit her body. And Maya is naturally really tiny. Like even right now when she does gymnastics in her class, she is the smallest girl. She's just, tiny in her structure. And so the 0 to 3 clothes were too big and too loose on her. So Max had to go get some preemies. They're called premature clothes, and they sell them as well on Amazon and pretty much everywhere. So nobody told me that, and that was kind of hectic because there was nothing that I could put her in other than the swaddle blanket. So get some different clothes. Like, I know we all assume, but if I were you, I'd pack like one premature baby clothes, maybe one set of regular baby clothes, 0 to 3, so that you can find from the mix of that what works for you. The other thing I wanted to mention that's very, 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 very important to all you moms out there who are about to give birth, you need to buy a specific kind of clothes. And I sent this type of onesies to almost all my friends that gave birth because that is so important. So, the ones that have a lot of buttons on the onesie, it doesn't quite work because for Maya, for example, she was a very fussy baby, and for her to be stable and get her not to scream was a big deal. So for me to put that clothes on, it would have taken me 20 minutes. First of all, they're so tiny, you're scared to kind of like touch their body and manipulate it into different positions that you need to, get their hands into these long onesies. And so for me, that was an issue because she was so tiny. She was so fuzzy. She was constantly doing this because she was screaming and yelling and crouching and whatever. There's no way I would have put her in those long onesies with like a whole bunch of buttons. The buttons are long. I don't even know who thought of buttons from the people that designed these. When the kid is screaming and crouching and all these, to actually button those buttons is like, are you kidding me? I remember with Max, we took like a good 20 minutes to do this, and we're like, never again. Those are going to thrifty store or donation, because that's just not something we're going to deal with. It's just not going to happen. And we got either the zipper ones, so you can like zip it up and you're done. That's a lifesaver right there. Or there is one type of onesie that works. It is also with the buttons, but it's totally different. It basically completely inverts, where you don't need to do anything, and then you just button up 1, 2, 3 and you're done. And it's really, really amazing. I am going to do a link below. I'm going to find them on Amazon, because this will be, you will thank me 100%. I went through 4 kids, and trust me, this was a lifesaver. I remember in the room, when I shared a room, so the way it works in Canada, you can apply for private rooms, but they will only be given to you if they're available. Every pregnancy I've been pregnant, I've had 4 kids. The private rooms were unavailable, so I was always sharing a room with someone else. And I remember every time I was sharing a room with someone else, they kept asking me where I got these, because they couldn't put their kids into clothes, and I just did it like a boss. It's just like 1, 2, 3 and go. So that's important. There's a an open concept onesie that I am going to put in the link below. Diapers, pacifiers, bottle and food if you're not planning to breastfeed. What I want to say about that, with the bottles, I found my personal favorite, not a paid advertisement, but my personal favorite is Dr.Brown's. I found that they give less colicky, so I always bought Dr.Brown's. They're available everywhere. They're just so good in a sense that they have that inner part, which I find the babies get less air in when they drink the milk, and then they have less burp and less gas and less problems with their tummy. So I really like Dr. Brown's. If you're going to go with the formula, I suggest, at least for the first months, if you can get the pre-ready formulas, that would be great. They sell them with several brands in cans that you just open up a can, pour the formula and give to the baby. Just because it's very hectic with the formula, with the warm water, with all that stuff, mixing and all that. Your head is like this, you're way too tired. So I would suggest, if you can, even for the part when you're in the hospital or the first week, just get 20 or 30 cans. You won't need more than that. Just already made bottles of milk for the babies that you can just open up, pour, and have them eat. That's what I did, and it worked magic. Similac is what I used, I believe, pretty much throughout all my 4 kids. I didn't use a dairy one because they had problems with colicky with the dairy, so I went with, some of them were soy and some of them were something else, but I know it wasn't dairy. Honestly, with the formula, you're just gonna have to try different ones, because Maya was super fuzzy. We tried the dairy, we tried different brands, and there's only one brand that she really liked. I can't remember the name. I think it was Similac. It was like a purple Similac ready-made can that she really enjoyed. With the babies, you really want to just try one. If they're fine, they're not fuzzy, they're not screaming, go with it. If they're screaming, colicky, they're crunching, they're making lots of moves, they're not sleeping throughout the night, you got to start changing something. It's the same thing if you're breastfeeding and you're intaking some foods that they're not happy with, then it's the same thing. You got to figure out your milk routine. I know that a lot of women eat, a certain diet in order for the baby not to be colicky, because there's certain foods that go with the milk in the baby's body that they're not happy with. So this is the same thing with formulas. If you're going with formula, just keep changing formulas. There's nothing wrong with that. Just keep seeing, okay, well, I'm going to do 2 days of this formula, see how the baby feels. I'm going to do 2 days of this formula, see how the baby feels. And eventually you'll just find one that they will be less fuzzy, sleeping more, and so you'll know that's the one that works for them. So that's my 2 cents. Let's go further. Baby blanket, the receiving blanket, hat. Hat was a big deal. My kids came out with no hair whatsoever. They were bold, and so the hats were a big deal. I bought like 2 or 3 hats. Same thing, buy a small one, medium, and large, because you don't quite know. Some of them are really stretchy, but I still found that I usually bought like a smaller and a bigger version to see which one fits better. Baby mittens. Some kids don't like them. I know Martin was constantly fuzzy when I put them on. He just didn't like it. Maya did. Maya loved the mittens. I would put them on. She was very fuzzy, so she kept with her nails, either, putting it, like making her scratch the face, or just putting her hands in the face and just waking her up. So the mittens were a big deal. Vaseline. So I know not a lot of people mention this Vaseline for the baby, but it helped me a lot, because the first or the second day when you're in the hospital and they bath the baby, the Vaseline was a big deal. Maya had some really dry skin from the beginning, from when she was born. And so the lady in the hospital said, you need some Vaseline. I had some and it was good. We just put some and it just went right off. And it was, the dry skin was in her, like, I want to say where her bum is, where her legs on the other side is. So not where the knee is, but on the other side of the knee. I found it to be dry. I'm not sure from what it happens, but it did. So have a small Vaseline with yourself. Wipes, that's obvious. Car seat, that's also obvious. I know some people online mentioned to try the car seat a couple of times with like a doll to strap it up, but I don't know, it's not a rocket science, to be honest with you. The only thing you want to do is make the all the parts loose so that when you close the car seat, you're not harming the baby, and then you can kind of tighten the car seat on the baby. Honestly, the staff at the hospital is always so helpful with the car seats. They always kind of train you and teach you, so I don't think it's a big deal if you bring a car seat and just teach yourself there. For hubby, if he stays there, I already said a blanket, a pillow if he's very fuzzy. Max didn't really care for a pillow, and there was always one at the hospital. Birth plan, if you have one, give it to the husband. He's probably going to know what to do with it more. I think if you're birthing with a midwife, she would have a birth plan as well. I personally don't believe in birth plans because no matter how you plan it, things are going to go the way they're supposed to go. I don't believe in birth plans in general because I've never had to deal with it going by my plan. Like you still, whether you have a birth plan or not, you still have a picture in your head how things should go. We're humans. We are made that way. So for every pregnancy that I thought, oh, well, it's going to be probably like this, or it's going to be probably like this, it was always a chaos. The pregnancy, the birth, everything was a chaos every time. Except I want to say with Martin, but he was just that kind of a baby. So, in general, I don't believe in birth plans, but if you're the type of person that's important and you want to kind of pour your heart into creating one, then have your husband have one. And maybe in your birth plan, I would suggest writing different scenarios, like, this is how I want it to be, but if things go wrong, this is how I want it to be, and if things go wrong, this is how I want it to be. This way you have like ABC birth plan, and I think then you're really covered because you're ready for things not to go by your original desire. So, in general, this is the last list that I have, and honestly, I have these written up on just little notes like this, nothing fancy. I'm really minimal like that. In general, you need a phone charger, that's obvious one. Books and magazines, I know a lot of people suggest it. And for birthing, I never had to read a book or a magazine because everything was hectic. You'd rather talk to your mom, mother-in-law, your husband, someone else. Like, there was never a period of time where I had, so nothing to do to a point where I needed to read a book or a magazine. Maybe for a husband, but honestly, I don't think you need plenty of that kind of stuff in a hospital. Anyway, we all have our phones now for if you're bored and you really want to kind of zone out and go on media or whatever, you could always do that through your phone. So I don't know how useful books and magazines are, but if you're the type of person that loves books or, you think you'll enjoy spacing out into your favorite book, then maybe take that, because if you're in a place where you have an hour to kill and you really need to concentrate on something else and take your mind away, then maybe you need to read a book to kind of lift yourself and be at a different space and read your favorite book. Most important in general is maybe the music playlist that you want to create. If you're going to be stuck in a situation where you're there in a couple of hours and you're just going to wait until you dilate, and you have to keep walking, or like you keep being in the room, that a music playlist that you did previously of your favorite songs or songs that calm you down, or maybe meditation mix, I don't know what your favorite songs are. It would be helpful to have maybe even a YouTube playlist with your favorite songs that you can put on once you are there. Maybe a Bluetooth speaker so you can put it and listen to it instead of having it with AirPods. You can listen to it through Bluetooth. That's up to you. But if you're a person that music calms you down, you really need it, then maybe it's a good idea to have a list ready and have a Bluetooth ready. I think that's it for my list of things to take to the hospital. Honestly, I know there's so much information on the web now that you probably don't need this. That's why I wanted to keep it minimal and just to say what helped me and what I took with me. I never took anything fancy, just everything very, very minimal and things that helped me. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was my heart talk about my 5 pregnancies and 4 birthing stories. And that's about it. I hope you are with us every day. We are Family Daylife channel, do videos about anything that has to do with families, anything that has to do with chaos, raising kids. We have 2 jewelry companies that we own, one in Canada, one in Miami, Florida, and that's all about us. If you're interested to know about us, I am going to put a link here with the video introduction to our family and to all our kids and to all of us. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're going to subscribe. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.